Hello, my name is Bach, and I'm a PhD student from the Czech Republic, University of Economics in Prague. I'm going to present to you a joint work of me and my colleagues, Golam Rabi and Bojek Svatek, in collaboration with Oscar Corcho from the Polytechnic University of Madrid. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about our research paper, and the name of the paper is Ontologies Supporting Research-Related Information Foraging using knowledge graphs, literature, survey, and holistic model mapping. So just a brief recap of the paper. The paper itself focuses on identifying potential coverage overlaps and missing features in ontologies about research and the academic domain. And to do that, we look for ontologies that contain concept about research, and we align these ontologies with a holistic model that we created using a competency question analysis, and then we make the coverage to find out to which extent the ontologies that we found cover our model. Uh, all of our results and materials and resources for this project is available on our GitHub repository, which you can find under this link here. And so for this presentation, I'll talk about our motivations for doing this research and then a bit of related work. I'll talk about the methodology and the approach that we used. And for each phase, I'll discuss the results. So our first motivation here is that the information researchers want or need depends on their particular role in certain situations. And because throughout the researcher's career, he could be involved in many different activities and his role can change each time. And it is obvious that the type of information that is needed for each of these roles can be quite different. And if we take a look at the academic domain itself, we know that there is a good number of concepts that could be used to describe the whole domain. And this common basis is relatively generic across research fields and makes it possible to move from textual search to structured databases on the web. And this is where knowledge graphs come in, because they may help improve the exploration and integration of this kind of linked data that is well modeled using ontology schemas. We found that the existing scholarly datasets or knowledge graphs, they only cover a few types of entities, mostly things like publications, authors, projects, and maybe some kind of institutions. That's why researchers usually need to manually combine knowledge from multiple sources, most of which is actually unstructured textual search. And that's why it is our goal to try to develop a holistic knowledge graph to address such needs. So to do that, we must understand the current state of ecosystem of reusable ontologies that could help build this knowledge graph. And by doing so, to identify the overlaps and gaps in the system, this would help us better decide on choosing among the overlapping ontologies and possibly developing new ontologies to fill in the gaps. So this is a couple of related work about ontologies that I want to mention. It's like quite evident that these work focus on a limited areas of research life. So there was a research gap that we wanted to cover, and that is making a survey of ontologies related to daily activities of researchers in different roles. And our contribution is therefore to update existing scholarly ontology surveys and aligning these ontologies with an analysis of information needs of different researcher roles. And our approach is, first we carried out a literature search to find related ontologies. Then we created a holistic conceptual graph model based on a competency question analysis. And lastly, we align the concepts in the ontologies with the concept in the holistic model, while looking for missing features and overlaps. For the literature survey part, we use online databases and search engines, because given the fact that research-related projects would be published in research literature, we use Scopus, Web of Science, Google Scholar, and also Google to make sure we do not miss any related ontology or relevant projects. We followed a step-by-step procedure, which can be seen in this figure here. We use several generic keywords to find articles and projects. We looked at the citations and gathered a bunch of links and related resources, and then manually examined each resource, and then created a list of ontologies with links to their source code and descriptions, and sometimes even documentation as well. Another significant source for finding ontologies was the linked open vocabulary catalog of ontologies, in which we found some more relevant ontologies. The result of this phase is a table of metadata of the ontologies that we found. We have gathered 43 ontologies in total, and we used 34 of them for further analysis. And if you are interested, you can go to our GitHub repository to see the full list of ontologies together with their metadata. So the next part is to create the holistic model that I talked about. To do that, we analyze the resumes of and activity logs of 2 senior researchers, and we interviewed them for what kind of information they would need in particular situations or in particular researcher roles. And then together we identified the researcher roles, which can be seen here. And for each role, we asked competency questions and provided answers using academic concepts and their relationships. So an example of such competency question might be how important are the venues where the researcher publishes. This is a common question of people that evaluate researchers. And the answer to this question could lie within the connection of concepts such researcher, publication, venue, and the assessment of this venue. Another example is at the bottom of the slide. The question, which company or other organization is active in the given field as a potential industry transfer target? This is the question asked by industry transfer promoters, and the answer to this question involves the concepts of project, topic, and organization. So from these competency questions, we extracted graph fragments and used them to create the holistic conceptual graph model, which you can see here. And here you can see the model with the interlinked concepts. The connected nodes indicate that there is some relationship between the concepts. And the nodes that have a self loop, for example, publication, indicate that there could be a relationship between 2 instances of the same class. One thing to note here is that we target the concept at a high level only. The process of creating this model here is to have a glossary of terms and their hierarchies. And after that, we use the top level concepts to create this relationship model. Also note that the paths are not disambiguated and may correspond to multiple different relationships. You can imagine that there could be like 3 or 4 separate connections hidden under one single edge. And this is the further breakdown of the top concepts. These category members are needed after for the coverage analysis, where we map existing ontologies onto the model for each of its concepts. And so we moved on to the coverage phase. What we did here is we created a spreadsheet with the concept and relationships from the model and the ontologies that we found during the literature survey. So for each element in the model, we determine whether it is covered in each ontology and by which class and properties in the ontology. To do this, we had to look into the ontology source code and their documentations to find the classes and properties and their meanings. We note down every coverage match and put them in the table. The matches are in many cases approximated. We also aggregated the number of covered concepts for each ontology and the number of appearances of each concept in each ontology. And therefore, we ended up with the coverage table from which we identified missing features and in each ontology and the overlaps of concept coverage across these ontologies. And this is the fragment of the table. The whole table can be found in our GitHub repository. So I'll just quickly explain the table structure here. The first column is the elements from our holistic model. The second column represents the number of ontologies that cover this particular element. The following columns are the actual ontologies, where on the second row we have the number of terms that is covered in a particular ontology. And in each cell under that, you can see that we have noted down the concept that represent the particular partial coverage. And these are some of our observations after doing the coverage table. And the result shows us that there are lots of research-related concepts, and they are pretty well covered by existing ontologies, but mostly when combined, because there's never a single ontology that cover our whole model. And also there are some concepts that is sort of underdeveloped, such as spin-offs, funding programs, and some forms of assessment. And also we miss a unifying superclass for let's say research outputs. So a concept for that might be reusable artifact. And so the conclusion of our paper is such that the coverage analysis reveals a high number of overlaps in many areas, while some others are untouched. Our paper has been focusing on the ecosystem of ontologies alone. In the near future, we plan to extend our survey to actual knowledge graphs and some existing thesauri. We also expect to add another dimension to our analysis regarding their usage in datasets and knowledge graphs. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening.